The giant space station looked like a floating city made of glass and metal. Ships from across the galaxy docked at its many ports. Some ships were smooth and silver. Others had strange spikes or glowing parts. The biggest ships belonged to the most powerful alien races. Kim Tae-ho walked through the main hall of the station. He wore a simple black suit that looked boring next to all the colorful alien clothes around him. As Earth's military representative, he had to be here for this big event. But he wished he was back home instead. The Grand Galactic Defense Exposition happened every 5 years. All the alien races came to show off their weapons and armor. They wanted to prove who was the strongest. They also wanted to sell their technology to other races. "Look at all these fancy displays," said Park Hye-jin as she walked up to Kim. She was Earth's chief engineer. Her job was to study all the alien technology they would see today. Some of these armor suits cost more than our entire military budget. Near them, a group of tall gray aliens with 4 arms were showing off their battle suits. The suits were black and seemed to drink in all the light around them. When someone shot a laser at the suit, the beam just disappeared. "That's Korthani technology," whispered Lee Dongwoo, a young man who studied alien cultures. "They call it void armor. It can absorb almost any energy attack." The Korthani noticed the humans watching. Their leader, General Vextar, was twice as tall as any human. His skin was dark gray like stone and his eyes glowed red. He walked over to the human group with heavy steps that made the floor shake. "So Earth finally sends representatives," General Vextar said in a deep voice. His words came through a translator device. "We have heard much about your limited capabilities." Kim Tae-ho stayed calm. "We're here to learn from other civilizations." "Learn?" The general's laugh sounded like rocks grinding together. What could primitive humans possibly teach the galaxy? Other aliens started gathering around to listen. There were blue-skinned Thalassians who lived in the ocean worlds. Their armor looked like living sea creatures that moved and breathed. There were also Zephirites, tall beings made of living crystal. Their armor was part of their own bodies. "We brought some examples of our defensive technology," Park Hye-jin said quietly. General Vextar's red eyes got brighter. "Show us these examples." Kim Tae-ho nodded to 2 human soldiers who had been waiting nearby. They brought forward several large cases. When they opened the cases, the aliens leaned forward to see what was inside. What they saw made them step back in surprise. Then they started laughing. Inside, the cases were sets of old armor. They looked like they belonged in a museum. There were metal plates held together with leather straps. Some pieces had decorative patterns painted on them. The armor looked hundreds of years old. "This is a joke," said one of the Thalassians. Her voice bubbled like water. "These are ancient relics. Are humans so poor that they use museum pieces for protection?" asked a Zephyrite. Its crystal voice rang like bells. General Vextar picked up one of the helmet pieces. It was much smaller than his huge hand. "This metal is primitive iron and steel. Our weapons could melt this in seconds." More aliens gathered around. Soon there was a crowd of different species all looking at Earth's armor and laughing. Some took pictures with strange devices. Others made sounds that their translators turned into mocking comments. "Look at these leather straps. Is this supposed to stop plasma weapons? How do humans even survive wars with equipment like this?" Park Hye-jin's face turned red with embarrassment, but she kept her voice steady. "This armor represents centuries of human craftsmanship. Each piece was made by skilled workers who understood protection." "Protection?" General Vextar dropped the helmet back into the case. "This wouldn't protect against stone arrows, let alone modern weapons." Lee Dongwoo stepped forward. "These designs have been tested in battle for generations. Korean armor makers perfected these patterns over many years." "Korean?" The general had never heard the word before. "What is Korean?" "It's one of Earth's cultures. They made some of the best armor in human history." This made the aliens laugh even harder. The idea that humans had different cultures making different types of old armor seemed very funny to them. A small group of alien merchants started taking bets. They used strange glowing tablets to place wagers on which species had the best defensive technology. The odds for Earth were so bad that the numbers barely showed up on their screens. 1,000 to 1 against humans, said a merchant with tentacles for arms. "Any takers?" Several aliens put down bets against Earth. They acted like it was easy money. Kim Tae-ho watched all this happen with a calm face. Inside, he felt angry, but he had been trained not to show it. Park Hye-jin looked like she wanted to argue with every alien in the room. Li Dongwu kept taking notes on his tablet about everything he saw and heard. Perhaps, said General Vextar loudly, Earth would like to see real defensive technology. He led the group to the Korthani display area. In the center was a mannequin wearing the void armor they had demonstrated earlier. The suit was sleek and black with no decorations. It looked like it was made from liquid shadow. This armor can absorb energy equivalent to a small star, the general explained. Plasma, lasers, particle beams, all useless against it. The wearer becomes nearly invincible. He pressed a button and hidden weapons started firing at the armored mannequin. Bright beams of energy hit the suit and disappeared without leaving any marks. Explosive shells bounced off harmlessly. Even weapons that created small black holes had no effect. The other aliens nodded with respect. This was clearly advanced technology. Now observe Thalassian bioarmor, said the blue-skinned representative. Her armor was still moving like it was alive. It adapts to any attack and grows stronger. She demonstrated by having different weapons fire at her. Each time a weapon hit, her armor changed color and texture. After being hit by a laser, the armor became shiny and reflected light. After being hit by an explosive, it became thick and cushioned. The Zephyrite showed how their crystal armor could repair itself instantly. Even when pieces were broken off, new crystal grew back in seconds. Other species demonstrated armor that could turn invisible, armor that existed in multiple dimensions at once, and armor that could absorb the life force of attackers. Each demonstration was more impressive than the last. The technology was clearly far beyond anything Earth could make. The aliens knew this, and they made sure the humans knew it too. So, General Vextar said when all the demonstrations were finished, "What do you think of real armor, humans?" Kim Tae-ho looked at the amazing displays around them. Then he looked back at Earth's simple cases of old metal armor. Very impressive. We have much to learn. Indeed you do. The general's red eyes seemed to glow brighter with satisfaction. Perhaps Earth should focus on farming or art instead of trying to make military equipment. The other aliens laughed again. Some of them were already walking away, having lost interest in the primitive humans. But Park Hye-jin noticed something strange. While all the aliens were laughing and making jokes, Kim Tae-ho didn't look worried or upset. He looked like someone waiting for something to happen. She also noticed that Li Dongwu had stopped taking notes about alien technology. Instead, he was studying the aliens themselves, watching how they moved and acted. Something was not quite right, but she couldn't figure out what it was. The exhibition continued around them, with more species showing off more amazing technology, but the humans just stood quietly by their cases of old armor, waiting for something that none of the aliens could see coming. The next morning, Kim Tae-ho sat in a small cafe inside the space station. He drank something that tasted almost like Earth coffee but had a purple color. Across from him sat two other humans who had arrived during the night. Choi Min-ho was older than the others, with gray hair and quiet eyes. He worked as a military historian, but he knew things that weren't in any history books. Yang Soo-bin was younger with quick hands that were always moving. She studied how to make new materials that didn't exist in nature. "The aliens think we're weak," Kim said quietly. "Good," replied Choi Min-ho. "Let them think that." Yang Soo-bin looked around to make sure no aliens could hear them. "I've been studying their technology all night. It's impressive, but it all works the same basic way. They either absorb attacks, redirect them, or just make themselves too strong to hurt. And that's a problem?" Kim asked. "No, it's predictable," Yang smiled. "They're all solving the wrong problem." Before Kim could ask what she meant, an alarm sounded throughout the station. A voice spoke in dozens of alien languages, but the translator devices turned it all into the same message. All exhibition participants report to the main hall immediately. When they arrived at the hall, they found hundreds of aliens gathered in a large circle. General Vextar stood in the center, looking even bigger than before. His red eyes scanned the crowd until they found the human group. "Representatives of the galaxy," the general began, his voice carrying across the huge room. "Yesterday's displays were entertaining, but demonstrations against practice targets prove nothing. Real strength must be tested against real challenges." Murmurs went through the crowd. Everyone knew the general was building up to something important. Therefore, the Korthani Empire proposes a series of practical tests. Each species will face the same weapons in the same order, with increasing power. We will learn who truly has the best defensive technology. An alien with green skin and multiple eyes raised one of its forearms. What kind of tests? Combat scenarios, the general replied. Each species sends one representative wearing their best armor. They face increasingly powerful weapons until their defenses fail. We record everything for scientific study. The aliens started talking excitedly among themselves. This wasn't just about showing off anymore. This was about proving who was really the strongest. The tests will take place on Kepler 7, a dead moon with no atmosphere. General Vextar continued. Perfect conditions for weapons testing. All participants will observe and learn from each other. A crystalline zephyrite rang like a bell when it spoke. What weapons will be used? Standard progression. Kinetic projectiles, explosive charges, energy weapons, plasma cannons, and finally exotic particle weapons. Each level stronger than the last. Kim Tae-ho felt his stomach tighten. Exotic particle weapons could destroy entire buildings. He had seen the test footage from alien laboratories. Nothing human-made could survive that kind of power. All species are invited to participate, the general announced. Unless, of course, some feel their technology is insufficient. His red eyes looked directly at the human group when he said this. The message was clear. This was a challenge specifically aimed at Earth. Several alien species immediately accepted. The Thalassians gurgled their agreement. The Zephyrite chimed their acceptance. Other species joined in quickly, each one eager to prove their superiority. Finally, all eyes turned to the humans. The entire hall went quiet, waiting to see what Earth would do. Kim Tae-ho looked at Choi Min-ho and Yang Soo-bin. Both gave him small nods. Earth accepts the challenge, Kim said clearly. The aliens looked surprised. They had expected the humans to make excuses and leave. Some started laughing again, but others looked thoughtful. Why would humans agree to certain humiliation? Excellent, General Vextar boomed. The tests begin tomorrow. Each species brings their best warrior and their best armor. We will finally see who deserves respect in this galaxy. As the crowd broke up, different alien groups gathered to discuss strategy. The humans walked back to their quarters in silence. Once they were alone, Park Hee-jin exploded with frustration. Are you crazy? Those weapons will kill whoever we send. Not necessarily, said Yang Soo-bin calmly. What do you mean, not necessarily? I saw those demonstrations. Our armor is metal plates held together with leather. Their weapons can destroy spaceships. Choi Min-ho sat down heavily in a chair. Tell me, Hye-jin, what do you know about traditional Korean armor design? I know it's old and primitive compared to what we saw today. Look closer. Choi pulled out a tablet and showed her detailed pictures of the armor pieces they had brought. Look at these joint patterns. Look at how the plates overlap. Look at the way the metal is folded and shaped. Park Hye-jin studied the images. She had to admit the craftsmanship was beautiful. Every piece fit perfectly with every other piece. The patterns were complex and mathematical. It's good work, she admitted, but it's still just metal and leather. Yang Soo-bin smiled. What if I told you that those patterns aren't just decorative? What if Korean armor makers hundreds of years ago accidentally discovered something that modern physics is only beginning to understand? I'd say you've been reading too much science fiction. The mathematics of those joint patterns create natural resonance frequencies, Yang continued. When you layer certain metals in specific geometric arrangements, you create quantum field interactions. Park Hye-jin stared at her. That's impossible. Ancient armor makers didn't know quantum physics. They didn't need to know the science, Choi Min-ho said quietly. They just needed to know what worked. Trial and error over centuries led them to designs that we're only now learning how to explain. You're both insane, Park said. Even if that were true, how would it help against particle weapons? Yang Soo-bin's smile grew wider. Because those geometric patterns, when reproduced at the quantum level, don't just create resonance. They create stable micro-wormholes. The room went silent. Park Hye-jin looked from one person to the other, trying to understand what they were telling her. The armor we brought isn't really ancient, Kim Tae-ho said finally. It looks ancient. It's based on ancient designs, but it's made with materials and techniques that won't be discovered by most civilizations for another 1,000 years. We've been working on this project for 20 years, added Choi Min-ho, taking traditional Korean designs and building them with exotic matter. The patterns that ancient craftsmen created by instinct, we can now create deliberately. Park Hye-jin sat down hard. You're telling me that our primitive armor is actually more advanced than anything those aliens showed us. Much more advanced, Yang confirmed. Their armor stops attacks by absorbing them or deflecting them. Our armor redirects attacks to different dimensions entirely. The stronger the attack, the more efficiently the system works. Why didn't you tell me this before? Because we needed the aliens to underestimate us, Kim explained. We needed them to reveal all their capabilities while thinking we had none. Tomorrow, when they see what our armor can really do, the entire balance of power in this galaxy will change. Park Hae-jin thought about this for a long moment. Who's going to wear the armor in the test? Kang Ji-woo arrives tonight, Kim said. He's our best test pilot. He's been training with this equipment for 2 years. And if something goes wrong, if the armor doesn't work as well as you think it will, Yang Soo-bin's expression became serious. Then humanity will be seen as even more pathetic than the aliens already think we are. But if it works, Choi Min-ho finished, then every species in this galaxy will have to recalculate their assumptions about Earth. Outside their window, alien ships continued arriving at the station. Each one brought representatives eager to witness what they thought would be humanity's final humiliation. None of them suspected they were about to see something that would change everything they thought they knew about warfare technology and the strange little species from the third planet of an ordinary yellow star. The betting pools had grown throughout the day. The odds against Earth were now so high that some aliens were putting down huge amounts of money, treating it as easy profit. By tomorrow evening, those same aliens would be desperately trying to cancel their bets. But first, humanity had to survive what was coming, and that would require armor that worked in ways the galaxy had never seen before. The dead moon called Kepler-7 had no air and no life. Its gray surface was covered with craters from billions of years of asteroid impacts. It was the perfect place to test weapons without worrying about destroying anything important. Dozens of alien ships orbited the moon, each one filled with observers watching through powerful sensors. On the surface, a temporary base had been built with energy shields and weapon platforms. Everything was controlled by computers to keep the observers safe. Kang Ji-woo stood inside the human transport ship, looking at the armor he would soon wear. He was young for this job, only 25 years old, but he had trained his whole life for combat situations. His calm eyes showed no fear, even though he knew he would face weapons that could destroy buildings. "Are you ready for this?" Kim Tae-ho asked him. "I've been ready for 2 years," Kang replied. "Ever since I first put on the prototype armor and walked through a laser barrage without getting hurt." Park Hae-jin was still having trouble believing what she had been told. The armor looked exactly like the museum pieces she had seen yesterday. Metal plates, leather straps, and decorative patterns that belonged in a history book. "I still don't understand how this is supposed to work," she said. Yang Soo-bin was making final adjustments to her scanner equipment. "The metal isn't really metal. It's an exotic matter composite that mimics the appearance and weight of traditional materials. The patterns aren't just decorative. They're quantum field generators operating at frequencies that create controlled dimensional distortions." "In simple terms?" Park asked. "When something tries to hurt Kang, the armor opens tiny doorways in space and sends the attack somewhere else." Through the ship's windows, they could see the testing ground. It looked like a circular arena with high walls to contain explosions. Weapon systems pointed toward the center from all directions. A communications signal came through from the main control station. "First test beginning. Thalassian representative, please take position." On their screens they watched as a blue-skinned Thalassian walked to the center of the arena. The alien wore bioarmor that moved like it was alive. The surface shifted and rippled like water. "Beginning kinetic weapons test," announced the computer voice. Machine guns fired bullets at the Thalassian from multiple angles. The bioarmor immediately responded, becoming thick and rigid where the bullets hit. Most bullets bounced off harmlessly, though a few penetrated and left small wounds. Explosive weapons test. Grenades exploded around the alien. The bioarmor spread out like liquid to absorb the blast waves, then reformed into its original shape. The Thalassian remained standing, though clearly shaken. Energy weapons test. Lasers fired from all directions. The bioarmor became shiny and reflective, bouncing most of the beams away. Some burns appeared on the alien's skin, but nothing serious. Plasma weapons test. Streams of superheated gas hit the armor. This time the bioarmor struggled. It became thick and white, trying to insulate against the heat. Large burned areas appeared and the Thalassian stumbled. Exotic particle weapons test. A beam of pure energy, containing particles that shouldn't exist in normal space, struck the alien directly. The bio-armor lasted for 3 seconds before it dissolved completely. The Thalassian was immediately teleported to safety, but everyone could see the test was over. Thalassian representative eliminated at level 5, the computer announced. The next several hours followed the same pattern. Each alien species faced the same weapons in the same order. Each one performed well against the earlier weapons but eventually failed. The Corthani void armor absorbed everything up to the plasma weapons, but the exotic particles overwhelmed its energy absorption capacity. General Vexistar himself wore the armor and lasted longer than anyone else, but even he was eventually defeated. The Zephyrite's crystal armor was nearly perfect against physical attacks. Bullets and explosions barely scratched it, but energy weapons heated it until it cracked, and plasma weapons melted it entirely. Species after species tried their best technology. Some lasted longer than others, but none made it past the exotic particle weapons. The aliens watching from their ships began to understand just how powerful these final weapons really were. Finally, only Earth remained. Human representative, please take position, the computer announced. Kang Ji-woo walked slowly across the gray dust of the moon's surface. He wore armor that looked like it belonged in a museum. Metal plates covered his body from head to toe, connected by leather straps and decorated with painted patterns. Compared to the high-tech equipment the other species had used, he looked like a warrior from ancient history. In the orbiting ships, aliens placed their final bets. The odds against Earth had grown even higher after seeing how powerful the weapons really were. Some aliens bet their entire fortunes, certain that the primitive human armor would fail instantly. Beginning kinetic weapons test, machine guns fired from all directions. The bullet struck Kang's armor with loud clanging sounds, but instead of bouncing off or penetrating, something strange happened. The bullets seemed to slow down as they approached, then stopped completely before falling harmlessly to the ground. Interesting, muttered General Vextar from his observation ship. The armor appears to have some kind of kinetic absorption system. Explosive weapons test. Grenades exploded around Kang in clouds of fire and smoke. When the smoke cleared, he was still standing exactly where he had been. The explosions seemed to have had no effect at all. In the human ship, Yang Subin watched her instruments with excitement. The quantum field generators are working perfectly. The armor is redirecting the kinetic energy through dimensional microtunnels. Energy weapons test. Lasers fired from multiple directions, creating a light show around Kang's position. But the beams bent and curved around him like water flowing around a stone. None of the energy actually reached his armor. The aliens watching began to pay closer attention. This wasn't just good armor. This was something completely different from anything they had seen. Plasma weapons test. Streams of superheated gas, hot enough to melt steel instantly, struck Kang from all sides. The air around him glowed with heat, but when the plasma touched his armor, it simply vanished as if it had never existed. Impossible, whispered one of the Corthani observers. Where is the energy going? Park Hae-jin was staring at her scanner readings. The armor is creating stable wormholes at the point of impact. The plasma is being transported to empty space millions of kilometers away. Exotic particle weapons test. This was the weapon that had defeated every other species. Particles that existed only in laboratory conditions, carrying energy equivalent to small nuclear weapons, focused into a beam no wider than a pencil. The beam struck Kang directly in the chest. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the armor began to glow with soft light. The patterns painted on its surface became brighter and started moving, shifting and flowing like living things. The particle beam, instead of destroying Kang, began to bend and twist around him. Space itself seemed to warp, creating visible distortions that hurt to look at directly. Gravitational anomaly detected, reported the computer. Massive space-time distortion at target location. The exotic particle beam was being absorbed into the armor's quantum field system and redirected through dimensional portals. But unlike the earlier weapons, this one was so powerful that the redirection process was creating secondary effects. Kang stood calmly in the center of a growing sphere of twisted space-time. The ground around him began to crack as gravitational forces pulled in different directions. The weapon platform firing the particle beam started to shake as its own energy was reflected back at it. Increase weapon power to maximum, ordered General Vextar from his ship. "Sir, that's dangerous. At maximum power, the weapon could do it." The particle beam doubled in intensity, then doubled again. Soon it was carrying enough energy to destroy a small asteroid. Kang's armor responded by glowing brighter. The moving patterns covered his entire body now, shifting through colors that had no names. The space around him warped so severely that distant objects appeared twisted and bent. And still he stood unharmed. "Target continues to show no damage," reported the computer. "Weapon system is experiencing energy feedback. Recommend shutting down to prevent overload." But it was too late. The exotic particle weapon, trying to pump more energy into a target that was redirecting everything through dimensional portals, reached critical failure. The platform exploded in a flash of light that could be seen from orbit. When the light faded, Kang was still standing exactly where he had been. His armor had stopped glowing and returned to its normal appearance. The patterns were just painted decorations again. But around him, the ground was covered with glass where the sand had melted from the heat of redirected energy. "Human representative shows no damage," the computer announced. "All weapon systems have been defeated or destroyed." In the alien ships orbiting above, complete silence fell. Every species that had mocked Earth's primitive armor was now staring in shock at a human who had just walked through weapons that destroyed everything else. The betting pools collapsed as aliens tried desperately to cancel their wagers. But it was too late. The impossible had happened. Earth had won. The silence in the alien observation ships lasted for exactly 17 seconds. Then every communication system in the fleet activated at once, filling the radio frequencies with panicked voices speaking in dozens of languages. "How is that possible? Our sensors must be malfunctioning. Run the test again." General Vextar stood frozen on the bridge of his command ship, staring at the human who continued standing calmly in the center of the destroyed testing ground. His red eyes dimmed and brightened as he tried to process what he had just witnessed. "Analysis," he ordered his science officer. "Sir, according to our instruments, the human armor created over 3,000 stable micro-wormholes during the final weapon test. The exotic particle energy was distributed across multiple dimensions, with exit points scattered throughout empty space." "That's impossible. Wormhole technology requires massive energy expenditure and equipment the size of space stations." "Yes, sir. That's why it should be impossible." On the surface of Kepler-7, Kang Ji-woo began walking back toward the human transport ship. His movements were relaxed and steady, as if he had just finished a light training exercise instead of surviving weapons that could destroy cities. Inside the ship, Park Hee-jin was staring at her instruments with wide eyes. "The readings don't make sense." According to these scanners, Kang's armor was manipulating space-time at the quantum level, but that would require technology centuries ahead of anything we know how to build. Yang Subin smiled as she packed up her equipment. "Now you're beginning to understand." "Understand what?" "That we've somehow developed impossible technology without anyone knowing about it?" Choi Min-ho activated the ship's communication system to address the alien fleet. "This is the Earth delegation. We would like to invite all interested parties to observe a more detailed demonstration of our defensive capabilities." "Are you insane?" Park hissed. "We just barely survived one test and now you want to do more?" "We didn't barely survive anything," Kim Tae-ho said calmly. "We were never in any danger. Kang could have stood there all day without getting hurt." As Kang climbed back into the ship, Park noticed something she had missed before. He wasn't even breathing hard. His heart rate, which she could monitor through his suit sensors, was completely normal. The most powerful weapons in the galaxy had just been fired at him, and his body showed no signs of stress at all. "How do you feel?" she asked him. "Fine. A little warm, maybe, from all the energy being redirected around me. But the armor's cooling system handles that automatically." "Cooling system?" Yang Subin began explaining while the ship lifted off from the moon's surface. "The armor doesn't just redirect attacks. It also manages the secondary effects. Heat, radiation, electromagnetic pulses. Everything gets channeled through the dimensional matrix and dispersed harmlessly." "But how does it work? I mean, really, how does ancient Korean armor create wormholes?" Choi Min-ho opened one of their equipment cases and pulled out a helmet. Under bright lights, Park could see that what looked like simple painted patterns were actually incredibly complex geometric designs. Traditional Korean armor used specific joint angles and plate overlaps that created natural stress distribution, he explained. The craftsmen didn't understand the physics, but they discovered through trial and error that certain patterns worked better than others. Those patterns follow mathematical principles that we've only recently learned to recognize, Yang added. When you reproduce them at the quantum scale using exotic matter, the geometry naturally creates spatial distortions. Park examined the helmet more closely. The metal looked normal, but when she touched it, it felt strange. Not quite solid, as if her fingers were pressing against something that existed partially in another dimension. The metal plates are actually crystallized exotic matter, Yang continued. Each one contains billions of quantum field generators, all working together to create controlled spacetime curvature. The leather straps are actually flexible superconductors that coordinate the field interactions. So this isn't really traditional armor at all. It just looks traditional. No, it is traditional armor, Choi corrected. It's made using traditional Korean designs, traditional proportions, even traditional decorative patterns. We just build it with materials that exist outside normal spacetime. Park's head was spinning. How long have we been working on this? The basic research started 30 years ago, Kim explained. But the breakthrough came when we realized that human craftsmen from centuries past had already solved the geometric problems we were struggling with. They created patterns that naturally produce quantum field interactions. We've been studying traditional armor from all Earth cultures, Yang added. Japanese, European, Middle Eastern, they all have interesting properties. But Korean armor had something special. The mathematical relationships in traditional Korean designs are almost perfect for creating stable dimensional portals. Their ship had docked with the main space station. Through the windows, they could see alien ships arriving from all directions. Word of what had happened was spreading quickly through the galaxy. So what happens now? Park asked. Kim's expression became serious. Now we change everything. For the past century, Earth has been seen as a weak, primitive world on the edge of known space. Most species barely acknowledged our existence. That's about to change, Choi agreed. Every military force in the galaxy just watched their best weapons fail completely against our defensive technology. They're going to want to know how it works, and whether we have more surprises. Do we have more surprises? Yang's smile returned. The armor Kang wore is just the basic defensive model. We have versions designed for different combat situations. Some focus on redirecting energy attacks. Others specialize in kinetic absorption. We even have experimental suits that can phase partially out of normal spacetime. Plus, the technology scales up, Kim added. The same principles that protect one soldier can shield entire spacecraft or even space stations. Park thought about the implications. You're saying our entire fleet could be equipped with this technology? Our entire fleet is already equipped with this technology. Those primitive Earth ships that everyone laughs at, they're actually the most advanced defensive platforms in the galaxy. Before Park could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the station. The communication system activated with an emergency message in dozens of languages. Attention all species. The Korthani Empire requests an immediate diplomatic conference with Earth representatives. Priority Alpha protocols are in effect. Through their window, they could see General Vextar's massive command ship moving into position near the station. Its weapon systems were powered down and it was broadcasting peaceful intentions on all frequencies. That was fast, Kim observed. They're not stupid, Choi replied. They know what this means for galactic power balance. Every military doctrine in known space just became obsolete. Park was looking at scanner readings from the various alien fleets. Multiple ships are requesting permission to approach. I'm reading Thalassians, Zephyrite, and at least 12 other species. They all want the same thing, Yang said. They want to know if we're willing to share our technology, or if they need to start treating Earth as a major power. Kim Tae-ho stood up and straightened his uniform. Time to find out how quickly the galaxy can adapt to new realities. What are you going to tell them? The truth. That humanity has been underestimated for too long. That our ancestors left us gifts that we're only now learning to use properly. And that the little blue planet on the edge of known space just became the most important world in the galaxy. Outside their ship, hundreds of alien vessels waited for answers that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. Inside, a small group of humans prepared to reveal that Earth's greatest strength had been hiding in plain sight all along, disguised as the wisdom of ancient craftsmen who understood secrets that took modern science centuries to rediscover. The laughter that had echoed through the exhibition hall just days before was about to become the most expensive mistake in galactic history. The main conference hall of the space station had been rebuilt overnight. Instead of the circular exhibition space, it was now arranged like a diplomatic summit. Representatives from 47 different species sat at curved tables, all facing a single podium where Kim Tae-ho stood. The change in atmosphere was dramatic. Yesterday, aliens had been laughing and placing bets against Earth. Today, they sat in complete silence, waiting to hear what humanity had to say. General Vextar occupied the largest chair, his red eyes fixed on Kim with an intensity that would have been frightening a week ago. Now it just looked like desperate attention from someone who knew his entire worldview had just collapsed. "Fellow representatives," Kim began, his voice calm and steady. "I want to thank you all for attending this emergency session. I know many of you have questions about what you witnessed yesterday." A Thalassian representative stood up, her blue skin darker than usual with stress. "We need to understand what we saw. Our scientists are saying it's impossible, but our sensors recorded it happening." "What you saw was the practical application of principles that human craftsmen discovered centuries ago," Kim replied. "They didn't understand the science behind their discoveries, but they knew what worked. Ancient humans created technology that surpasses our most advanced research?" The question came from a Zephyrite, its crystal voice ringing with disbelief. Choi Min-ho stood up from the human delegation table. "Not technology, wisdom. They learned that protection doesn't come from strength or absorption. It comes from redirection." He activated a holographic display that showed the mathematical patterns found in traditional Korean armor. The geometric designs rotated slowly in the air, beautiful and complex. "These patterns create natural resonance frequencies in space-time," Choi explained. "When you build armor following these exact proportions and angles, you create a system that naturally opens microportals in dimensional space." Yang Soo-bin added her own hologram, showing how exotic matter could be arranged to follow ancient design principles. "We didn't invent dimensional manipulation. We just learned how to reproduce what our ancestors had already figured out through centuries of trial and error." A small alien with multiple arms raised 3 of them to get attention. "Are you saying that your primitive ancestors accidentally discovered advanced physics?" "We're saying that they discovered something better than advanced physics," Kim replied. "They discovered truth. Universal principles that work regardless of whether you understand why they work." General Vextar finally spoke, his deep voice carrying across the hall. "How many of these armor suits do you possess?" The question everyone had been waiting for. The answer would determine whether Earth was sharing an interesting discovery or revealing a military capability that could dominate the galaxy. "We have equipped our entire military force," Kim answered directly. "Every Earth soldier, every ship in our fleet, every defensive installation has been upgraded with dimensional redirection technology." Gasps echoed through the hall. Several alien representatives began urgent conversations in their native languages. "You're telling us that Earth's military is now invulnerable to conventional attack?" This came from a reptilian alien whose species controlled several important trade routes. "Not invulnerable," Park Hyojin said, standing to join the explanation. "The armor has limits. If you could generate enough energy to overload the dimensional matrix, it would fail, but that would require weapons that could destroy small planets, which most civilizations don't possess," Yang added with a slight smile. The implications were staggering. Earth had gone from being a minor primitive world to having the most advanced defensive technology in known space. Every military calculation, every strategic plan, every assumption about galactic power had just become worthless. "What do you want from us?" General Vextar asked bluntly. Kim looked around the room at dozens of alien faces, each representing a species that had to completely reconsider their relationship with humanity. "We want what we've always wanted," he said. "Peace, trade, and mutual cooperation. We didn't develop this technology to conquer anyone. We developed it to protect ourselves." "But surely you understand that this changes everything," said a tall, thin alien whose species had been neutral in most conflicts. "Your defensive capabilities make conventional warfare obsolete." "Only if people insist on fighting," Kim replied. "We'd prefer to make warfare unnecessary." Choi Min-ho activated another display, showing traditional Korean architectural patterns. "Our ancestors didn't just make armor. They designed buildings, cities, entire cultures based on principles of harmony and balance. What if we applied those same principles to galactic civilization?" You're proposing to reshape galactic society? General Vextar's red eyes were brighter now, but with interest rather than anger. We're proposing to share what we've learned, Yang said. The dimensional manipulation technology has applications beyond military use. We can create transportation networks, communication systems, even new forms of art and entertainment. Park Hyejin pulled up her own data. Our preliminary research suggests that these principles could revolutionize space travel, energy production, and resource distribution. Everyone could benefit. But several alien representatives looked skeptical. A creature covered in metallic scales spoke up. Why should we trust you? You've been hiding this technology while letting us think you were weak and primitive. Kim's expression became more serious. Because proving we weren't weak was never the goal. Surviving was the goal. For centuries, Earth has been seen as barely worth anyone's attention. That kept us safe while we developed the ability to defend ourselves. You were preparing for war, accused another alien. We were preparing for peace, Choi corrected. Real peace, backed by the ability to protect ourselves if anyone decided to take what they wanted by force. Lee Dong-woo stood up for the first time during the conference. As the youngest member of the human delegation, he had been quiet until now. But his words carried the weight of someone who had studied dozens of alien cultures. Every species in this room has been conquered at least once in their history, he said. Every one of you has stories about times when you were weak and others took advantage of that weakness. Humanity decided that would never happen to us. So what happens now? Asked the Thalassian representative. Kim looked around the room one more time. Now we build something new together. Earth is willing to share our discoveries with any species that wants to work toward genuine cooperation. We can teach others how to create their own dimensional defense systems. In exchange for what? General Vextar was still thinking like a military commander. Cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, trade partnerships based on mutual respect rather than who has the biggest weapons. Kim smiled. And maybe some of you can teach us things we don't know yet. Yang Subin nodded enthusiastically. There are aspects of bioarmor and crystal technology that could enhance our dimensional systems. Imagine what we could create by combining the best ideas from all our civilizations. A galactic community based on shared strength rather than competing weaknesses, Choi added. For several minutes, the hall filled with quiet conversations as different species discussed this unexpected turn of events. Earth hadn't just revealed superior technology, they had proposed a completely different approach to galactic civilization. Finally, General Vextar stood up. As the representative of the most militaristic species present, his words would carry enormous weight with the others. The Korthani Empire formally requests a technology-sharing agreement with Earth, he announced. We also propose the establishment of a joint research council to explore the peaceful applications of dimensional manipulation. One by one, other species stood to make similar announcements. The Thalassians wanted to study bioarmor integration with quantum fields. The Zephirites were interested in crystal matrix dimensional amplifiers. Even the most isolationist species expressed interest in cooperation. By the end of the day, Earth had gone from being ignored to being the center of a new galactic alliance focused on shared technology and mutual defense. Kim. Taeho looked out at the alien representatives who were now eagerly discussing joint research projects and cultural exchange programs. Just a week ago, these same beings had been laughing at Earth's primitive armor. Do you think this will actually work? Park Hee-jin asked quietly. It has to work, Kim replied. Because the alternative is everyone trying to steal our technology instead of earning the right to share it. Young Subin was already making notes about research priorities. The important thing is that we've changed the conversation. Instead of arguing about who's stronger, we're talking about how to make everyone stronger together. Choi Min-ho packed up the holographic displays, but he left one running, the image of traditional Korean armor patterns, beautiful and mathematical and powerful. Our ancestors would be proud, he said. They created something that protected their people for centuries. Now it's protecting entire civilizations. Outside the station windows, alien ships that had arrived as potential enemies were now forming cooperative research flotillas. The galaxy was about to become a very different place, guided by principles that ancient Korean craftsmen had discovered while hammering metal in small workshops hundreds of years ago.